guys, this is Tina. Welcome back to my channel. So I thought we'd do something a little bit different for our mass making today. I thought what we could do is make some junk journal paper flowers. I have done a tutorial on these before, so it's nothing new. It's certainly, not my idea or anything else. It's just my take on how I do them, really. But it's a brilliant way to use up some scraps and things like that. So what you will need if you want to make some is some papers. Now I recommend flimsy type paper, so book page is ideal, this kind of thinnish paper. I've got here some copy paper, that's okay. I mean, this one here that I kind of just made to show you, this is made from copy paper. Any thicker than that, I have made them occasionally with scrapbook paper, but it tends to get much more fiddly to do because obviously to crease the paper is a little bit fiddly. So I have just got scraps mainly from copy paper, which I have obviously printed on. Some have been coffee dyed, some haven't. But I've got here obviously a couple of colours so that hopefully I'll get some different looks for my flowers. And obviously I've got these book pages. And then I've got some of my ink pads that hopefully we could then, get some different effects going on the flowers just from using the different inks as well. So that's that, and I am using my hot glue gun. Now I appreciate that not everybody maybe has a hot glue gun. I personally find, I don't think I've ever even tried to make flowers without the hot glue gun, to be honest, because obviously it glues instantly. And what you will need if you are anything like me and not very patient for wanting to sit there holding your flower, is something that's going to dry instantly. Possibly something like the 3-in-1 would be okay, because it's quite fast drying. Definitely, definitely now they've changed the tacky glue, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's ideal because I don't think it's going to dry quick enough to hold your flowers. Have a play around if you don't have a hot glue gun and see what suits you best. As I say, I mean, I have, I think, always done them with a hot glue gun. The alternative is, I was going to say you could maybe kind of sew them, like kind of attach them with a thread or something, but I'm not sure how that, how that would be, how easy that would be. So I will run through and just show you how I make them, and then, we can just relax into the mass making, really. So as I say, they're nothing amazing technique wise or anything. They're super simple and yeah, kind of not my idea or anything. So what I'm going to start is cut down some circles for what I will use for my bases. Now again, no one's going to see this part because it's going to be glued down. So your circles, I mean, as you can see, that's not a circle really at all, but obviously I'm just trying to maximize, what I can get here from my pieces of card. And this is just, again, scraps from the 160 GSM card, even that I was making the mass makes from last time. It's just like the smallest portion that I will use for my base, because all you're going to need is basically something to glue your paper down onto. So again, you're wanting something thinnish. I personally wouldn't probably use copy paper, but that's just me. Other people maybe would. I mean, some people maybe would use, book page. I personally would find that quite flimsy and, I mean, I would probably end up tearing it or, over gluing it and the flower would fall apart. I don't know. I haven't ever tried that. I've always used a sort of thicker paper. So that's all I'm doing is, having a few bases here ready to go. I'll just do that one there. And again, like I said last time, I think these are a perfect thing for a mass make because for me, I find these quite fiddly to make. And so I love having them, love using them. I'm not saying I don't like making them, but I find them quite fiddly. So to have some ready-made and ready to go is absolutely awesome. So, for me, definitely very beneficial. So this is the colour paper that I actually used for this one. So I'm just going to tear some strips. Now, what I'm going to do is try and tear it without the core showing, if that makes sense. So I know I've got it showing here, but that's okay because I'm going to probably trim that down to have as my, you know, inside of the flower. So I'm just going to sort of tear down a couple more. So I'll just tear a bit here like that. And that's probably all I'm going to get that's plain of that colour. So then what I might do now is just tear down again, but this time get some with the text on it. So, and don't worry if you know, screw your paper up a little bit, because I mean, obviously these are junk journal flowers. So, I mean, actually, you know, the more scrumpled that they are, the better really. So again, what I will do is just trim that down here like that. And then obviously here, I'm just going to take a portion of the text again like that. And again, trying to not get too much of the white core of the paper. And then I will just go in here and do the same there. Okie dokie. So I will just trim those down. Okay, now what I like to do is, I mean, I like to have them all looking quite rough and ready really. So if I've got any with straight edges like this one, I either will kind of try and have that hidden, i.e., you know, squash it down a little bit at the edge, or I'll just tear that. But to be honest, because obviously that piece of paper is quite small, I'm not going to tear that. So all I'm doing is like scrumpling it at the bottom. Can you see that? So it's like making it almost like a fan type shape. I have seen some people do this in very long pieces. Now again, if you are able to do that, that's fantastic. Personally, I find it much easier to have my pieces in smaller sections, if that makes sense, because I find these then nice and easy to handle. I can splay them out and, you know, fiddle around with them. So I just tear it into sort of what I would deem as manageable chunks then, like that. And again, don't worry if your pieces aren't, you know, level at the side. We're making flowers, and obviously flowers are all shaped petals. So, I mean, actually, that's, you know, better, I think, you know, because flowers are not uniform, are they? They are all jiggedy jaggedy. So again, we just come down like that and then in like that. Okay, so I like to just do a few and have a few there ready, and then take one of my circles and I take my flower petal thing, and this, what I would call like the sort of, I mean, I'm going to call it the stem, but I do not mean the stem as in the green stem of a flower, if you see what I mean. It's really, it's the centre. So I just like to pop that in there, like that. Okay, so that's your first one. And then quite often, I like to put them opposite each other and build them up that way. But again, you know, play around with this, because, you know, never say never. Just because I'm doing it this way here, you know, another time you could go all the way around. I mean, I think this is quite a good way to do it, because then it builds it up. How do you describe it? You know, like sort of, instead of going like a helter-skelter where it's going to get gradually thicker and thicker as you go round it, if you do it like opposite and then the two sides opposite, if that makes sense, then you haven't really got that helter-skelter effect. You've got like flatter and then upper. This is making no sense. I can't describe what I'm trying to say. I'm sure you will get what I mean. Whereas if I had gone round, it would gradually get fatter just on one side. Whereas now, it just looks to me a bit more balanced, you know, to have it kind of like one side and the other side. I'm sure that made absolutely no sense probably to barely anybody, but it made sense to me. But I just couldn't put that into words. And then you can obviously layer up for the centre. So you may want to trim this down. So these are definitely going to be smaller than your outer petals, if that makes sense. So again, just squash them in and then see whether you need to take them down or not. I mean, actually, I think mine are okay. So again, I'm just going to sort of pinch them in there, take my hot glue gun and then just pop that in like that. Okay. So this is where I say that, you know, I don't know what it would be like making these with normal glue, because obviously the second you take your hand away, they're going to kind of ping up, unless you've got something that's very fast drying. So you may want to experiment around and sort of see, you know, what you think would work. Just going to trim this one down slightly in height, just to make sure that my inner flower, my inner, you know, sort of ring of petals are definitely smaller. So I just go around there like that. And for this one, I'm just going to layer it up like that, because I will probably only get 3 layers in that middle bit, if that makes sense, rather than the 4 that we had on the lower flower petals. So that's that. And then just going to tear these, and again I'm just going to cut that down so it's shorter. Let me just squish that in, making our little fan type shape like that, and we're just going to pop that in there. Now I know that I've talked about this before, but this is probably about my 3rd or 4th glue gun, I actually can't remember now, but I've always had the same one. Just going to kind of press that in there just to make sure that's kind of flat like that. There we go. Yeah, I've always had the same one. It's a Bosch PKP 18E is the model number, and the only reason I'm saying that is because I do get some people sometimes ask which Bosch, or you know, which glue gun do I use. I have always used this same one, so when it breaks I always replace it with the same one, because I love this nozzle on it. Actually it's got a little bit of glue there, but I love this nozzle because it's quite long and pointy, and a lot of glue guns have just a really fat end, which then you can't be very precise with. If you wanted to check it out, it is linked on my Amazon affiliates page on my website, so you know, if you want to go and make sure that you're seeing the right one, then feel free to hop across and have a look. But I mean, I'm not paid by Bosch or anything like that to recommend that. I mean, obviously if you ordered via clicking my Amazon affiliate link, I would you know, earn a little percentage, maybe I don't know what the percentage is even, but from that. But I'm recommending it because I think it is a really awesome glue gun. I'm not recommending it, you know, because I'm being paid by Bosch or anything like that. I just think it's a really fantastic, you know, glue gun. So yeah, if you wanted to have a look, that's the one that I use and I really love. And then I'm just going to finish this off by popping a little button in. Now this button's pretty tiny, so I'm just going to dab my glue straight onto the flower, because I don't want to obviously pop it onto the button and miss and glue my finger instead. There we go. And as you can probably see while I was waffling on about the glue gun, I just inked around my flower. So that's it, all inked up there. So we'll make another one. Perhaps we'll make one from this book page now, so we have some different looks going on. So I'll leave those on there. Yeah, I mean, I've had about 3 or 4 glue guns because I think they kind of generally seem to last me about 1.5 years or something. again, please don't quote me on that, because you know, time just flies so quickly that you can't really tell, can you? But I would say roughly, yeah, they probably last me about 1.5 years, which, although that might not sound overly long, I mean, I use my glue gun all the time. So, you know, every time I'm at my desk, I have it plugged in and switched on. So technically it's on like a lot of the time. I mean, I'm pretty sure that when they sell the glue guns, they're probably thinking someone just needs it for the odd occasional use. You know, I doubt they expect people to have it plugged in almost on a daily basis for like, you know, hours at a stretch. But yeah, I mean, I think for the money, I mean, over here in the UK, I think it's about like £19 or something like that. I think it's a really good gun. It's, you know, it's really nice to use, and I really do like it. So yeah, and actually value for money, I don't think that's that expensive given how much I use it. I think that's, you know, that's pretty good really. So yeah, and I did go through a phase of buying different glue sticks from Amazon. However, I have now decided to go back to only using the Bosch glue sticks at the moment, because I've had a few glue sticks in the last year or so where they haven't necessarily glued like fabric, say, or, you know, they haven't glued as well as I would expect them to, or as well as they have in the past. And I'm sure that that's probably because they're not the, you know, the Bosch glue sticks. So yeah, I'm just kind of experimenting for a while, going back to using the Bosch ones, which, although are dearer to buy than some of the cheaper brands, to be fair, they probably last a lot longer. I mean, I buy the long ones. They're like 11mm by something like 25 centimeters long or something like that. So although they are quite expensive compared to some of the cheaper ones, because I think you get like, say, 25 in a pack or something, where some of the smaller ones and cheaper ones you could get maybe like, you know, 100 for like half the price. To be fair, I think these last quite a long time. They seem to sit in the glue gun for a long time compared to some of the other brands that I have tried. Well, the others are sort of unbranded, if you know what I mean. They're just those people selling, you know, a non-branded glue stick. So yeah. And actually, to be honest, that might be what in the end clogs my glue up, you know, my glue gun up, and ends up sort of killing it. So maybe I'll be better off using the glue from Bosch anyway. Right, that's the whole history of my glue gun, which I'm sure must have been riveting to hear about. But it is interesting, I think, to share sort of some of these things, because, you know, it's nice to hear what other people's feedback is on stuff, I think. So, right. And I mean, like with my Amazon affiliate thing, I mean, I've set that up on my website. I mean, obviously I haven't had any transactions or whatever, you know, through that as yet, but I've set it up. I mean, because obviously, you know, doing this now without my job to support me, so I now need to, you know, make sure that I'm supporting myself, but also because I know that sometimes when people say what product they've used and then I come to go and look for it, and there might be like multiple things similar, and then I think, oh, which one did they actually mean, you know? So it's quite nice to be assured that you are actually looking at the particular one that I'm talking about, or, you know, that the person has mentioned. So yeah, it's hopefully like a win-win for everybody, you know, because obviously hopefully I might you know, get a small percentage. I mean, I don't even know what the percentage is, and on £20, you know, really, I'm sure would not equate to very much, but I guess, you know, well, I don't really know how it works, to be honest, but anyway, I'm guessing it all mounts up and things like that. So but yeah, I think hopefully it's a win-win, because obviously you will then know that you are looking at the exact one that I've mentioned. Whereas if you don't really have links and things, I can say the one that I mean, but when you go on there, there might be like 4 different models to choose from, and it might be that, you know, it's not the same one. So yeah. Right, so hopefully you can see this flower sort of being built up now with the book page. And like that. Okay. And again, you know, probably just get like one teeny one in there. So I'm just going to trim that down slightly, just so as it fits in that little gap. Like that. Okay. Oops. I'm literally covered in glue threads from the hot glue. So, I mean, they're really cute, aren't they? So what I might do is tear down some more paper and then make some flowers all together, if you see what I mean, and then do the inking all together, because that's probably a more efficient way of doing it. So just tear a few strips. I mean, the most time consuming part really for making the flowers is obviously the screwing them up into this sort of fan shape, I find. So, but I think they're worth persevering because I think they do turn out very, very cute. I'm going to do some in this pretty blue as well, because it's nice to have a few in different colours when you want to just pull some flowers in if you're making a journal. It's nice to have some different things. Oh, can you hear that wind out there? I know that when I say that sometimes, then, you know, lots of people do comment and say, oh my gosh, that wind. I mean, it's really strong, isn't it? I mean, it obviously sounds worse because where I am in the loft, you know, or the attic, I guess there's lots of, you know, people probably refer to it. It probably sounds worse, you know, because I'm right up the top of the house and it's kind of blowing right against the roof. If I were downstairs in a room, it probably wouldn't sound half so bad, but yeah, I mean, it obviously is blowing a gale out there, so yeah. Right, let's tear maybe a little bit of this. I mean, this again, you know, up to you, but you could actually just have it the coffee dyed side, the plain ones, or of course you could have it, you know, the pattern side, or you could sort of mix and match. So you could have a couple of bits on the coffee dyed side and a couple of bits on the pattern side. So okay. Down there. Right, so I've got a few strips here. I should really check the time because, as I say, I mean, I've only made a couple, but you know, they do take a little while to make, which was why I thought, you know, come on and do some for the mass making, because they are a bit time consuming, but they are a nice thing to have to put into your journals. So just do a few like that. So oops. Yeah, I suspect if I was downstairs it wouldn't sound quite as windy as it does up here. And to be fair, it is just wind, it's not raining, so that's something. Okie dokie. Oops. Okay. That's it. Just press them in. I mean, there maybe is a, you know, fast knack to doing these, I don't really know of one, unfortunately, but I mean, to be fair, they are a fantastic use of scraps of paper, because, you know, you really can get rid of quite a bit of paper making them, which is great, isn't it? Because that's what we're all wanting to do, is use up our scraps. Those same scraps that, that we hang on to and don't want to throw out for some reason. You know, I don't know what that's about, but we're all trying to use up these scraps and yet at the same time don't want to actually throw any of them out. Weird. Very, very weird. Oops, I might have to just tear that section off. So, I mean, again, you know, they're very forgiving. There's no, you know, rules when it comes to making these types of things. Just going to trim this one down because it looks really big compared to the others that I've made. And, you know, you could make these out of, you know, where you get the different types of colour book pages. Some are very yellowy brown, you know, things like that. So you could really play around and have quite a bit of fun with them. I mean, these blue hopefully are going to look lovely. And also, obviously, you know, I mean, I've used buttons in the centre of mine so far today. So it's also quite a good way to use your buttons. So if you're anything like me and obviously have a bit of a weakness for buttons, and I just buy them and then barely ever use them, which again, I don't know what that's about. But weirdly, that must just be quite a common thing, because we were in a shop at the weekend and it wasn't you know, crafty type shop. It's called Dunelm, and it's a shop here that we have. It sells all sorts of housey type things, really. So bedding and, you know, curtains and things like that. But it does have a small sort of haberdashery, well, you know, fabric type section. And it just has a little rack with like buttons and stuff on it. And as we walked over there, I mean, we weren't really even that close to it or anything. My daughter straight away said, "Oh, Mum, I love buttons." I thought, oh, I wonder if I passed that over to her or whether she would have loved them anyway. Have I given her my obsession with just having lots of buttons? I'm not sure. But to be fair, I can remember loving buttons as a child. And my mum had like a jam jar full of buttons. And weirdly, I never saw her actually use them. So, you know, they were obviously like buttons that maybe had come off of stuff, you know, that she obviously thought, oh, I'll keep that, I'll keep that, I'll keep that. And I mean, she's not a crafter, so it wasn't like she would have used her buttons then in projects like we do. So, I mean, her buttons, to be honest, they probably never, well, I mean, obviously she's still got them now. They would never get used because you're not really likely to just sew odd buttons onto something, are you? But yeah, I can remember sometimes just looking through her jar of buttons and oh, I love these, I love those, you know, just because there might have been the odd one that maybe was like flower shaped, or maybe like a glassy type looking one that might have then looked a bit more like a crystal, you know, that type of thing. Yeah, so obviously loving buttons is just something that a lot of us seem to do. But it did make me laugh with my daughter. I thought, oh, have I now given her the bug of loving buttons, or did she have that anyway? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. But yeah, she just made me laugh. Oh, I love buttons. Mummy, I love buttons. It's like, oh yes. So yeah. There we go. And I go through phases, you know, where, I mean, I used to just always use these flat back pearls, like the quite big ones. I absolutely love them. I still love them now. But I am trying to make myself use a few more buttons, to be fair, because I have got an awful lot of them. So it's high time I actually did start using them, really. we'll do some more of these blue ones. Yeah, and I mean, another thing that you could do is use your coffee dyed paper, so coffee dyed copy paper, and you could just stamp some script stamping and stuff on it. That would also look really nice. So, you know, for the petals, I mean, you know, just have a play around and see what suits you and what takes your fancy. Yeah, I have made some sometimes using sort of scrapbook paper, but I mean, you know, they do make that, you know, they are capable of making the flowers, but they're, you know, you can probably see this I'm finding quite fiddly, and this is just thin old copy paper. So, I mean, obviously the thickness of scrapbook paper, it just does make it that much more sort of, yeah, fiddly to make. I was going to say labour intensive, but I mean, it's not like it's really hard work, but fiddly. It definitely is fiddly. So, yeah. There we go. So, I mean, this, you know, is a much longer strip, as you can see, and I'm going to try and just keep it in one strip. But, I mean, I have honestly seen people do them like using one strip completely. So, you know, all power to you. If you can do it in one strip, that would probably be really quick and really easy. I mean, personally, I find that very fiddly to do things like that. But, you know, if you can, then that's fantastic. I mean, I guess maybe you could crumple them onto your circle base as you went round. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing suggestions out there, really, but I mean, definitely for me, I just find this method, you know, of making like little short ones, probably definitely the easiest method. And again, I mean, you know, you may prefer to actually ink your strip before you even get about screwing it, you know, screwing it up like this. You could have it already inked, and then you wouldn't need to ink your flower at the end. So, you know, have a play and see what method suits you best. I mean, personally, again, I quite like inking it once it's in, you know, to the flower shape, because then you've always got the ink sort of visible, if you see what I mean. But I guess if you ink it as a flat strip, then that's probably even more sure fail safe way of doing it. But yeah, just play around and see what suits you best. So again, just glue that down like that, and just be a bit careful, because obviously, you know, that hot glue is very, very hot. So, you know, just be a bit careful when you're pressing your petals in, because it can get, you know, really very hot. So, I mean, that was a much longer strip. So this one, I'm just going to do how I said I don't do it, because I probably only need 3 of the pieces. You know, if I use quite a longish piece or a biggish piece there, I can get away with just 3. So that's what I'm saying, you know, really play around, because it's surprising, you know, how you can speed up the process, and just what works on one flower might not be the same on the next one. So just play around. So again, take this one. There. Oops. So I might do this one now, like opposite. Like that. Okay. And just pop that one in there. And then final one. Just seeing if I've got a sort of shorter one. I don't think I have actually, so I'm just going to do a tiny one here. Oh, I said a tiny one, and look at how big that is. It's like the biggest one I've done. Right, so again, we'll just tuck that in. Oops. That's just going to go in there like that. I'm just going to tear that down slightly more. Oops. Yeah, I mean, this is not probably one to do if you don't like getting gluey hands, because this is quite a gluey hand project. So that's that one. So again, I'm going to leave my inking for the moment and do my inking in a minute. So pop that one there to the side, and then I might do my colourful ones, these ones here, I think. So again, this one's quite a long one, so I might only need 3 on here. It just depends really on the size, you know, of the next ones that I'm going to use. So that one's quite long as well, so just apply some glue there. And then I've just got a tiny one there, which just is perfect for in that space. So it's quite handy to have all your bits torn out, because, you know, if they're just like sat beside you, the chances are you will have one that will just fit in somewhere. And I mean, obviously there's no rules. These are, you know, just however they turn out really. And then you could mix them up. So, you know, you might want to mix this up now with like some of the blue pages, or maybe some of the book pages. And actually I might keep it all the same, but you know, you can mix and match them, so just experiment and see what takes your fancy when you make them. That's that one. And then this one here, which again, this is really big, so just going to sort of tear it down a bit more. Like that. Might even need to cut it down fractionally more, so I might just cut it from this end this time. Like that. And then, oh, would you believe I haven't got any more? So I'm just going to tear a little bit more. I only need it quite tiny to just go just there into that little gap. I don't even need that one there. There we go. So yeah, I mean, these are definitely not the speediest project. I mean, I will have a look in the, after I, you know, get rid of these bits of paper in a moment, I'll have a look and see what time we're up to. But definitely, I mean, I don't know what time we're up to, but probably we've done quite a few now, you know, or got into quite a bit of time. and we haven't made you know, a huge ton of them or anything, so they're not the fastest project on the planet. But you know, that's the type of thing that obviously is brilliant for a mass make, because obviously those things that we like to include in the journals but they're not very fast to make are precisely the types of things that we don't want to have to stop when making a journal to actually quickly rustle one up. So yeah, although these are a little bit of a protracted thing, they're just the type of thing that are perfect to actually have ready to go, aren't they? You know, they're the types of things that we don't want to have to stop and individually make one or two. Okay, and come around that side there and just fill in that one. And I like to just really press them into the centre like that, because you know, what you want to do is hopefully get them with a bit of dimension. Hopefully you can see that, you know, by pressing them into the centre, which with fabric ones, I do press fabric ones with the centre of my glue gun nozzle, but these ones I think are quite nice to just do, you know, with your finger. I'm going to, I think, have a little bit of blue in this one, so we've got a little bit of a different look for one at least. I'll just pop that on there. Oops. And then again, I just need to just trim this down a little bit, seeing whether I've got a smaller one going on anywhere, but I haven't, so just trim that down. Going to pop that on there. There we go. Ouch. Burnt my finger. Well, it had to happen, didn't it? Had to happen at some point. So, I mean, you know, that looks really pretty, doesn't it? With just a different colour on the centre. It's nice to, you know, experiment a little bit. So, for instance, we might be able to mix in like that. So just do those two sort of opposite each other, like that. Okay, and then we can just fill them in with some of these bluey greeny ones. Like that. And then on that side, like that. Wow, listen to that wind now. Just getting even louder, if that were at all possible. Okay, and then what I'm just going to do is tear down a little bit more of this. We just want a tiny sort of amount for in the middle. Like that. Now, I'm wondering, so I'm going to pop that there on top of the bluey green, and then I'm going to do the same thing opposite. And then what I'm hoping is that this kind of pattern here might look good in amongst it, but it might not. I might be I might be really off there with my plan there. If not, I've obviously got some more of that blue, so I can use that. But I just thought this might look a bit fun. If we have that there. Now, do we think that's too much different stuff going on? We'd be better off with the blue. No, let's go for that. I'm just going to glue this one in. So we'll just pop that down there. And then I'll just do one more piece here for the other side. That. I need to just tear that down a fraction. I'm quite quiet today. This is obviously a little task that I need to focus and concentrate a bit more on. Weird, because you would have thought these would be like the most simple thing on the planet, wouldn't you? But for some reason they require a little bit of focus, I find, so I have no idea why, but yeah, for me I think they're a little bit fiddly and sort of require a bit of concentration going on. So there we go. Right, so that's that one, and then I've just got these book page ones, so let's just quickly use them up. And then I would just check the time, see how we're doing. That one looks like a tiny portion of book page, so I might come unstuck here and find that actually I've stuck down, you know, a tiny one where I should have really used a bigger one, but never mind. Right, let's just... These ones, again, are sort of longer in proportion to their height, so I've just put them next to each other because I'm hoping I can just get away with just 3 rather than the 4. Okay, and just pop that one down there like that. Okay, and then we'll just finish that off with a couple more, just layered up. Now, am I going to manage to just do this with 2? Probably not. Probably not. Oops. Well, I might do if I just spread it out a little bit. There we go. Okay, right, so just sort of spreading this one out a little bit because it saves me doing, you know, tearing out a whole nother page from the book and doing a whole nother page. So there we go. Right. Okay, so that's that one. And then I've just got these 2 left, so I'll just put those to one side. Right, let's see how we're doing time-wise. I hope I'm doing all right. Oh, I can't see because the lights on the camera, not the camera, you know, the clock. Right, okay, I think it said 48 minutes. So we're just going to ink some of these up. So I'm going to start with obviously the vintage photo on these ones. Oh, I mean, how gorgeous does that look? Just love that. And I'm going to do it, I think, on this one as well. Like that. And then a bit on here as well. And then I did bring along some other colours. So let's do... what happens, let me just, this is where I really should be using obviously a different sponge, but never mind. I'm just going around this with some green and then I might go over it a bit with the vintage photo as well, but just thought it might be nice to you know, turn this a bit more like a green rather than a blue. So it's quite pretty, doesn't it? So just go over that with a bit of vintage photo as well. There we go. So that's quite pretty. Just, oh dear. Oh dear. This is where I really did need to get some separate sponges. In fact, pretty sure I have got a sponge here in my drawer with blue on. Yay! Now that's a first, isn't it? To actually have something resembling sort of organised. Oops. It had blue and now it has the vintage photo because I then dipped it straight into there by mistake. There we go. So let's just ink up this one with the blue. That's really pretty, isn't it? And actually what we could do is just go over that with vintage photo as well. I mean, I quite like it sort of bright, but we'll dull it down, make it look a bit more vintagey. I mean, that really does dull it down, to be fair. Right, what should we do with this one? Well, let's just do some vintage photo on this because, you know, this is probably going to be our last one now as they've taken us such a long time to make. So we'll just do like a vintage photo just on the regular book page to show how that looks. And then we will finish them off with some centres. So just have a look and see what we've got for centres. So just put my ink pads out of the way before I have an accident with those. Okay, so I'm having a look through my little tin beside me and just seeing what I've got here that might be suitable. Oh, all the buttons look quite big in there today, which is not ideal. Just pull in anything that might be, you know, even vaguely suitable. So I mean, it might be that actually I need to go off and pull in my buttons, but I like to try and just keep a few in my little tin beside me because, you know, it's helpful to just have them there ready to use. But I mean, obviously then I have quite limited selection, so it might be that I will need to go and get some more. So that's those. For those of you who didn't watch my channel previously, when I was like obsessed with the flat back pearls, which I do still love, this is the flat back pearl. Oh, I haven't used them for ages, and now the second I've put that there, I'm like, oh, I shall have to start going back to using the flat back pearls. They're one of those things that everywhere I put them, I just absolutely love them. I mean, obviously my mission was to use up some of my buttons, so I must try and keep that in mind, that actually this was about using up some buttons. But to be fair, those flat back pearls are just so awesome, aren't they? You know, that everywhere you put them, they look just so awesome. Right, that looked quite nice in there, so let's pop that in. Again, I'm going to add the glue to the middle of the flower because the button's quite tiny and I'm liable to burn myself if I just apply it to the button instead. So pop that there and then just press it. Like with even pressure at both sides, because otherwise you might have it stuck up, you know, one way or the other. These aren't brilliant for these, are they? I mean, that's quite nice. This is a bit annoying. That's not bad on there actually, so perhaps I'll go for that one on there, and I can put the glue directly onto this button because this button's quite big, so not so terrified with the big ones. Okay. Okay, so they're really pretty, and I'm just going to have one last rummage in my tin in case there's some more that I hadn't spotted. I mean, there are buttons in there, but it's just whether or not I have any that are suitable. What's that one? Oh, no, don't think I do. Would you believe? Got that one, which that's like really a strange sort of button. They're just too big. Got this one. So I thought maybe that blue one for that. Well, that maybe. What do you guys think? Oh, let's do that. Let's pop that blue one in. And then I think I'm going to just revert back to type and go with those flat back pearls, which now, because I've hardly got any left, I've got like about 3 in my pot there. So now I'm thinking, oh, it's time to go and buy some more, because I do really love them. And I had forgotten, obviously, how much I do love them. So yeah, I think I'm going to have to go and buy some more. They're gorgeous, aren't they? Really, really gorgeous. I mean, doesn't that look lovely? Oh, I hope I wasn't too close. Can't really see, and I then suddenly looked and thought, oh, is that all blurry? I'm not sure. Right, I'm going to put this button, I think, in this one. Minding my fingers, because it's quite a small button. Not as small as those others, I think, but quite small. So that's that. And then this one, what do we think to that button? That's quite nice, isn't it? Let's do that, because obviously I was really trying to be good and use up some buttons, so let's just pop that one in there. Okay, so that's our little flowers, and I think we're about 58 minutes, just coming up to 58 minutes. So yeah, so I mean, as you can see, we've only actually made made 8. So, you know, they're not the fastest thing to make, but I do think they are very fun. And to be fair, you know, they do add a really nice thing to your page. So, you know, just perfect for a mass make, really. So, yeah, I hope that you managed to get some done and hope you like them. Thanks very much for watching, and see you soon. Bye.